right, good evening, folks. Welcome to RenmanMusicandBusiness.com. My name is Steve Rennie, and I'm the Renman, and this is RenmanU, Lesson 9, Record Labels. Today, we're going to be talking about what it is those record labels do. We're going to talk a little bit about how they're structured and how they work together. We're going to talk about why you need a label. We're going to talk a little bit about how you get signed to a record label and what to expect once you get a record deal. And I'm going to give you some thoughts about how to manage the label to get you guys what you need. And of course, as usual, we'll be taking some questions along the way. So if this is your first time to RenmanU out there online, and it seems like we're getting a bunch of new people every week, let me tell you what we're doing here. There are lots of people out there on the web and lots of schools out there who want to teach you the music business. But here's what I've learned over 36 years. You can't learn the music business by reading a book or watching a video. You learn it by doing. You learn it from people that have done it and have succeeded in the music business. That's been my experience. RenmanU is my insider's guide to today's music business. I'm going to share with you guys today the lessons I've learned over 36 years of doing as a concert promoter, as a record executive, as an internet entrepreneur, and an artist manager. I'm going to try to teach you everything you need to know about how to succeed in today's music business. And we've been doing this for the better part now. This is week number 9. And so if you're just tuning in today, I hope you'll go back and start at square one with us. This business we're talking about is the real music business, folks. We're not talking about that fairy tale songs just fly version of the music business. This isn't your textbook version. This is the real music business. So if you folks out there are looking to do something great in the music business and you need some help, which is likely the case, you're in the right place today. Now, nothing comes free in life, really. So here's what I want from you lot here. I want you folks out there online and the folks in here in the studio today to be a part of it. I want to know that you have a burning desire to do something big in this music business. I want to know that you're willing to do the work, right, and put in the time that it takes to learn. Nothing comes easy. The best way to learn is to ask questions. So if it's your first time here watching or you haven't watched any of our shows, you already know what I'm going to say. We got a saying around here. It's that you don't ask, you don't get, right? That's you don't ask, you don't get, and you don't learn anything. And you're never going to do anything in life unless you learn. And so start by asking some questions. Let me tell you how you can do that. For you folks that are watching online today, for you advanced planners out there, wish I was more of an advanced planner. You can post your questions ahead of time on our event page, which Cody's showing you right there. You just sign in, you got to register, sign in, and put your question there, and we'll try to get to it during the broadcast. If you're one of those late to the party music business dudes, okay, or dudettes, you can post your questions in our chat room during the broadcast. Let me introduce my friend, Mr. Cody Cohen. We got 2 Codys here. We got Code 1 over in the corner and Code Red. Say hello, Code.
How's it going, guys?
All right, tell the folks how they can get involved there, Code.
Well, basically, I'll be here on the chat, so if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask them. I'll be sure to direct them to the Renman. I'm keeping a list here, so any good questions will be here.
Perfect. And try to keep your questions on point here, you know, because I got a whole schedule of stuff we're going to be talking about. So if you're a little ahead of the game, we'll just, we'll hold you off there. If you're one of those bold ones out there that just got to get involved, the easiest way is old school. You can call us on our RenmanMB hotline at 310-469-9067. And by doing that, you move right to the head of the class. I want to hear that phone ring. And I think we got a whole brand new bunch of T-shirts, which I meant to grab one here. We got a whole bunch of new Fuck the Gatekeepers T-shirts, which we'll reward you with if you call in on the show today. In addition to all you folks that are out there watching online today, we have some folks who've joined us here in the studio. Last week, the sun was shining. We had 5 people that are supposed to show up. 1 showed up. So I want to thank you lot for actually showing up to class today. That tells me something right out of the box. So let me introduce everybody, and you guys tell me what you're going to. I'm going to start over here on the right. You are?
My name's Mike. I've been in the entertainment business since 1978. And I'm a curator of an online education.
And what's that called?
World Mentoring Academy.
Perfect. I've checked it out. It's fun stuff. Give it a look, folks. This gentleman to your right is?
My name's AJ Pellicciati. I'm from Binghamton, New York, and I'm looking to be an artist manager.
Okay, you're out here all the way from Binghamton, New York this week? I know you didn't come out just to see me, did you?
Part of it.
Sure. Tell me you did. Okay. Come on, man. It's music business. You're storytelling here, Lid. Okay. Your friend to your right.
My name is Nick, and I am from Fairfield, Connecticut. We came out here to see you, 100%. I work in Sony Music right now in copyright, and we both graduated from Syracuse 2012. So we're here.
So you were in the Bandier School of Music?
No, but we finagled our way. Yeah, like we learned as much as we could from everybody that we could.
Okay, and you got a job working in the music business. Okay, so you just got a master's degree. You work at Sony. I was a Sony alumni. How long you been working at Sony?
Just about a year now.
Good. It's a great place to work. You know, they're the mad dogs of the music business. If you can succeed at Sony, you can succeed anywhere. Next to your right.
My name is Dave Nevin. I just moved out here from Chicago 3 weeks ago. So
You're loving this, huh, Nick?
Absolutely.
Or Dave? Dave, yeah.
I'm a DJ producer. Been doing it for about 10 years now.
Speaking of Mike, Dave.
So kind of came out here to make something happen.
Yeah, you'll be saying that a lot. Sing into the microphone, my friend. Okay, to your right.
Hi, I am Fritz Dorigo. I've been in the entertainment industry for 20 years. I was in a band, signed to Roadrunner, toured. Now I'm getting in the management side. I have an artist named Jim Camacho playing tomorrow night at Hollywood Forever. But I'm here today early to be here because I want to be on the show.
All right, great. I love that. We got 4 out-of-staters and 1 local here who rode his bicycle from Pasadena, folks. That's commitment, man. I'll tell you what. I felt pretty good, like I was doing something for the environment by getting that Tesla. I should be riding a bicycle, you know. All right, great to have you guys here today, and I hope you will not be a bunch of shy guys here, okay? Before we get started today, let me tell you a little bit about our website for you folks that might be tuning in for the first time. I got this wacky idea about 18 years ago that I was going to start a website called RenmanMB Music and Business with this kind of simple idea. I wanted to help aspiring artists and music professionals navigate their way around today's music business. I've been very lucky in my life to see so many of my little rock and roll dreams come true over the years. And I wanted to help others to try to make their business, music business dreams come true. I was very lucky early in my career to have some mentors. I'm trying to fill that role for some folks that are just starting off. So in doing this website, I've invited some of the smartest, most talented, most successful people in the music business to help me on my little mission. And today, I think our RenmanMB music business website is the single greatest source of music business knowledge on the planet. Not some posers out there, but people that have done it and have succeeded at the highest levels. I'll be introducing you to a few of those folks today that'll help me tell the story of labels. But if you're just starting and you're just getting to our website, I encourage you to dig down deep into the site and just start learning. We got all kinds of stuff in there. If you spend some time there, you can't help but learn something. One requirement, you got to be a member of our community. It's easy. I want you to go to our webpage, which Cody's got up there on the screen. You go there, click register. You put in all the information on the left. You give me an idea of what you're dreaming about doing in this music business on the right. And we can start a little conversation and all of you folks can be part of it. There's always something going on here at the world headquarters of RenmanMB. And the best way to keep in touch with us is on our social media. You can start with our Facebook page, RenmanMB, Twitter, @RenmanMB, YouTube, RenmanMB. Like pictures of dogs, behind the scenes stuff, our Instagram account, RenmanMB. Pretty simple, huh? All right, so if you can't figure that out, folks, that's not a great start to your career in the music business. So I'll trust that you were following along with that. If not, we'll come back to you and we'll do some private time. Okay, now that we've taken care of all that business, let's get started on our topic today. Today we're talking about record labels. And when I started this website, I just assumed that everybody knew what went on at a record label. But the fact of the matter is you probably had some experience because you were a band, which sometimes is maybe not the best way to learn everything that's going on. Being a manager, I guarantee you'll learn it all, okay? So let's start with the obvious question. What do record labels do? Last week we talked about marketing and promotion, okay, and all the things that are a part of that marketing mix. This week we're going to talk about the people that have most, closely associated with doing it, and that's record labels. So what do they do first and foremost? First and foremost, they finance the recording of your music. They help you make the album, by pairing you with people. They do the marketing of your music in your brand, which includes radio, publicity, online, and all that stuff. They help you make things, artwork, videos, and so forth, and they handle distribution and sales. Let's talk about that, financing the recording. That's the core of a record deal. A record label gives you an advance. Most of that money is to help you make a record, right? And when they've done that, once they've signed you, they'll actually try to help you go and make that record. And how do they do that? It might be just an A&R person that's giving you encouragement and encouraging you to go beyond where you think you can go. It might take the form of them pairing you with a producer or an engineer or a mixer. The idea is to surround you with experienced people that are great in recording music and help you get those songs to a level that's world class. Once that music is made, and that's no small proposition, then you get to this whole issue of how's your music going to be heard, and that's in the marketing and the promotion. So they pay for videos, they pay for photo shoots, they pay for touring, they pay for everything that's associated with marketing, advertising, and all of that stuff. And it's an important role that they play, and they write the checks for all that, most importantly. They also are in the business of distributing your music out there, and it seems simple enough, but it's a global market out there if you want to succeed big, and the biggest records in the business play around the world. That's both physical and digital distribution. So if it's physical, they'll help you with the manufacturing, determine what configurations you'll want to have out there. With digital, it seems simple enough. You deliver a file, and they should be able to get that everywhere, but there's hundreds of digital retailers out there beyond just iTunes, and all of them have their own processes and their own ways of delivering that music. So, that's an important role they play on the distribution side. I'll tell you another important role. They get the money. They collect the money. We had a whole bunch of lessons on our website, and if you go to the front page and click on Big Picture, one of those lessons is called Get the Money. I won't pull back the curtain, but over each of the guys' desk in here is Get the Money. That's an important part of this. If you're going to do this for a career, thank you, Cody. God bless you. He's so on top of it. So that, in a nutshell, is what labels do. Any questions so far? Any questions on the chat room there? All right, we're good. We got a smart bunch here. I want to talk to you about how these labels are structured, so you get an idea of how this all works out. You want to throw the graphic up there, Code? All right, so I can see it too here. I know this, but well, there we go. Okay. This is a general outline of how it goes, and I'll kind of walk you through it. The A&R is where it all starts. This is your likely entry point to a label. The A&R guys or gals are the people that identify the talent. They're the scouts. They're the ones on the front line that are deciding at the very early stages what music you're going to be hearing on the radio somewhere down the line. I mentioned that the labels help you try to get the best product possible, and they do that by pairing you with producers and songwriters. And in each case of an artist, it's a little bit different. If it's a rock band, you might just put them with a Brendan O'Brien or a Rick Rubin or a guy like that. If you're working in the pop space, it's a little bit more complicated matter because there might be multiple producers, there might be multiple songwriters. On these hip-hop writers, it's songwriters, beat writers, and all kinds of cottage industry around making the songs. But the idea is really simple. They want to get the best musical product out of you as they can. These A&R guys, they also fulfill the function of managing that recording process. We had our friend of mine, Brendan O'Brien, who's one of the top producers in the world. And we play a lot of golf, and we spend a lot of time together over the years. And I've always referred to him as the manager of the recording process. He does in that studio what I do when they're done, which is get everybody's head in the right place, try to get the best recording out of them. And sometimes you got to extract it out of a band, okay? And that's the A&R guy's role. You'll find that some of the greatest A&R people that I've worked with over the years, they wind up being the most intimate link to that artist. And so they sign a band because they either buy into the vision of that artist or they have some vision of where it could go on their own. So they also, the really great A&R people, advise on the marketing and help shape that and work inside the company, managing the company, lobbying the company. And we'll talk about that whole idea of getting prioritized later. That's the A&R guy. That's your entry point. Now, up here in this top corner, if you get lucky enough to get offered a record deal, you're going to run into one of these business business affairs guys, and it's a very fancy name for the lawyers. And typically big labels like Sony have a whole floor full of lawyers that work in the business affairs part. This is the in-house legal team. These are the guys that negotiate the deal points of the contract, and make no mistake about it, folks, they're working for the record company, trying to get the best they can. The business affairs guys are the person or the people that your lawyer is going to be working with. We talked about building your professional team. If you get a chance to sign a record deal, you don't go in there with a real estate lawyer. You go in there with somebody that's worked with these people, that has relationships with these people and understands the nuance of record deals. How much money you get paid for your advance, you know, how many records you get, how much you're paying or not paying for tour support, and all these things is all part of that process, and that's this business affair. So first A&R, then business affairs. Once that record is done and you've gotten through that whole process, now you get to the really nitty-gritty, the ugly part of the business, which is marketing and promotion. You got a question there, Cud?
No, we got the feed down.
Uh-oh. What happened? All right, we'll keep going here. All right, so that's, you know, the marketing and promotion is where that whole piece of the puzzle starts here, right? The key person for you once you get signed to that record label, okay, is your product manager, okay, where the producer is the manager of the recording process. This product manager is the person that engineers and lords over this whole marketing process. They are the people that are responsible for keeping the calendar and the timeline of all this stuff that's going on. So this is the person, that product manager, who's going to coordinate with all the various departments, and he's going to oversee it all. That would include the making of the videos, okay, where in the old days they used to have a big video promotion department. I don't think that's quite as true today. But in any event, that video and how much and who it is and all of that is in this gentleman's domain here. You talk about creative services. Once you've got your record made, you want to have a great package. You want to make sure all the marketing materials and all of the things that go along with it that help define that image, those all come from the creative services department, which at a big company like Sony is a whole separate department of people that are working on art and so forth. But they ultimately, answer to the marketing product manager. Online digital. We talked about this last week. When I started in the business, it was, in the record business, I worked for 4 years at Sony at the very dawn of the internet between 94 and 98. And back then, the digital marketing department was like a freaking ghetto. It was a bunch of geeky kids, and they usually, at Sony, they were literally in what used to be a storage closet. They put a couple computers in, they stuffed these 2 kids in there. Now it's a full-blown department, but they still report typically to this product manager because they're all now part of the mix, okay? So that person is your key person there. One of the key ways of getting your message out there and telling your story is through publicity, right? The publicists, that you see on Spinal Tap, that kind of caricature, is an important part of the mix. They're the ones that organize the photos. They're the ones that help write your bio. And this is the first hints of telling your story the way you want to tell it, painting the picture that you want to paint out there. And they do it by calling on all kinds of folks. Typical media, it might be TV, it might be radio, it'd be mainstream media publications, Rolling Stones and all of those folks. Today's world, it's going out and pitching websites, all these music websites. Today, blogs are probably as important a tool of getting the message out and getting some buzz going as anything. So today's publicists have had to learn some new tricks along the way, and that's all this in this online digital space. But these are the people who do it. Typically, there's a vice president of publicity, and there will be 2 or 3 staff publicists, right? And more the case today, they will go out and hire independent marketing and publicists for some of the bigger acts and pay the tab for that. So publicity is now part of that mix, and now you're starting to get your word out. Hello there, my name is Steve Rennie, and I am the RenMan. And I thought we'd take a little break from the RenmanU sessions and talk about the course that was spawned by it all. It's called The Insider's Guide to Today's Music Business. If you're looking for a no bullshit, straight to the point look at what it takes to survive and thrive in today's music business, you don't have to look any further. My Insider's Guide is the most comprehensive look at the inner workings of today's music business you're going to find anywhere at any price. Learning about the music business is easy and fun with my Insider's Guide. Let me tell you how it works. The course includes over 150 short 3 to 5 minute video lessons packed with insider knowledge. It's been my experience that in the music business, more often than not, big is good. Each lesson is accompanied by a written transcription for those of you that like to read and follow along while you learn. In addition, each lesson is accompanied by a supplemental video interview highlight from one of my smart, talented guests on RenmanMB Live.
You generally need a label for scale. So if you want to actually be a big artist and actually reach the world and have a lot of and hit all those touch points, which are very difficult to hit, you need an army.
When you finish watching the video and reading the text, you'll take a short quiz to test your understanding of the lesson. Instead of focusing on terminology, the quizzes are based around real-world scenarios you'll likely face in the real music business. You can take the quizzes as many times as you like. Once you've completed the quiz, your score is immediately posted, and I'll give you feedback on all the right and wrong answers to make sure you really understand what's going on. There's a lot to learn in the course, and it's easy to feel a bit overwhelmed by it all, but you'll know you're making progress every time you see that little green check appear by a lesson. It's also easy to keep track of what you've done and how much you've got left to do. The lessons cover all the key areas of the music business you need to know, including how to get your head in the right place. That's the big picture. Making great music, treating your career as a business, building your professional team, managers, marketing and promotion, record labels, music publishing, touring, and getting started. You can purchase the course in one of two versions. First, our solo version, where you'll have full lifetime access to the RenmanMB Insider's Guide. You can study at your own pace, choose what lessons you want to view and when. You can access the course from desktops, laptops, tablets, and smartphones. You'll also get access to our exclusive RenmanMB Live full episodes, which are no longer available on YouTube. For those of you that are really serious about your music business career and are looking for some personal attention, I suggest you sign up for the Mentor course. In the Mentor version of the course, you'll also get a 1-hour Skype session with me to talk about what you're looking to do in the music business, and I'll help you get a plan to make it happen. You got to do the work, but I'm going to point you in the right direction. I'm so sure that my course is going to help you learn the music business. I'll make you this promise. Take 30 days and go through the lessons and quizzes, and if you don't think my course is going to help you, just send me an email and I'll give you your money back. All right, that's my insider's guide to today's music business, and if you're really serious about doing something huge in this business, I hope you'll check it out. Now, let's get back to the RenmanMB web series that started it all. See you later. Once you've made that record, here's something that's really grown in the last few years since I've been in the business. In the early days, particularly with rock bands, they didn't want to license their music. They didn't want to be selling out to the man or selling soap or booze or water or whatever it is. Today, much different mentality for any number of reasons. The artists are more predisposed to allow that kind of stuff. The labels are more interested in it because a consumer brand company might have more money to spend promoting an artist than the record label might be comfortable with themselves. So properly conceived, those are important opportunities. So the licensing and the brand opportunity part of the record companies is huge now. They're looking for uses on TV and commercials and movies and video games, all kinds of applications that weren't even around when I first started in the business. This part of the process here happens once that music is delivered. Because these opportunities get talked about here and happen way out here on the timeline, they start as soon as that record's done, it's going to the music and licensing department and they're starting to try to identify opportunities for it. So a big part of the mix now, growing in influence every day. We'll talk about music publishing next week. This is one of the fastest growing areas of the music publishing income, are these licensing opportunities. If you've got all these things happening and now you're starting to build some buzz, you want to make sure that somebody can actually go out and buy your record, right? The old days, that happened at physical retail outlets, the Tower, the warehouses, and all these places that most of you young kids won't even remember. But sales and distribution and manufacturing is at the core of that. These sales guys are the guys that are in charge of getting your music into those retail outlets. So if it's a Target or a Best Buy, only a small number of records are actually getting into those places. But there are still, crazy as it is, there are still some small independent retailers out there, which for young artists that are just starting off are a key source of getting your music into the right places. These are the guys that call on those outlets. They're also in charge of the manufacturing process. So they're the ones that are going to talk about whether you're doing CDs, whether you're doing LPs, any kind of physical configuration. They're going to be working with you on that. They're going to be working with creative services and the marketing to make sure it all looks good, it shows up on time so they can get those records into the stores. Those are the guys that call on all these retail outlets, whether it's physical or digital, that get you those placements. So that when you go into iTunes today, there's God knows how many records are on iTunes, but there's only a very limited number on that front page, and it's no different in the online space than it was in the old days of trying to get in the front window, he's nodding his head, of Tower Records, so that when you drove down Sunset Boulevard, oh, there's my record. So the sales and distribution guys are the ones that do that. And we talked a little bit earlier about this idea of the labels making things. The digital thing, like I said, seems pretty easy to get all those pieces out to all these other, different kind of outlets, but it's not, and it's an important part of the mix. Any questions so far before we move on? Okay, Michael, a question?
Yeah, going back to the licensing and building of a thing, when do 360 deals become, when do you, if you were the manager of up-and-coming band, if you're the manager of an up-and-coming band, when do 360 deals, when do you say yay or nay?
Well, for me, I'm going to be honest with you. I, fortunately, did not preside over a 360 deal. And the thought of it, based on all my experience and perspective, is not something I'm comfortable with. That said, okay, I've made a decision. I'm not managing bands anymore. This is my way of mentoring without the personal and all the other stuff. I've talked about it with a lot of young managers, and we've had some big bands and big managers. Imagine Dragons, Fun, Young the Giant, Group Love. All of those bands have 360 deals, right? And that, to your question, when does that come into the mix? It comes into the mix right here. Because best I can tell, unless you have some huge leverage, you had 5 or 6 labels looking at you, even then I think there's a mentality among the labels driven by the real finances of today's business that they're not making as much money as they used to make, or not inclined to do that. And we can talk about a little bit more about that later of why that is, because there's some good reasons about from a debate point of view of why the labels can feel that way, and I think if I were managing a young band today, you'd have to accept that, and perhaps knowing what I know about the business, if you hit a couple home runs, you might be able to wiggle out of that somewhere else. The key thing is you got to get in the game, and we're going to talk about some of the ways that artists talk themselves out of the game over these kind of esoteric issues that can be sorted out if you're successful, right? So once you get sales and distribution, now the gun is loaded, right? You're out there, everything's in the freaking pipeline, is cocked and loaded, and now you got to squeeze the trigger, and that's these radio promo dudes here, right? These guys are the swashbuckling pirates. These are the people that come in and screw your girlfriends and your wives in the middle of the night. They take no prisoners because they got the toughest job around. They got to talk people into playing your music. And at every big station across America, there's maybe 2 slots a week that open up, and everybody's got the greatest record, and everybody deserves a slot, and only 2 people are going to get them. That's these radio promotion guys. So this notion of picking singles, okay, becomes a huge bone of contention. We're going to talk about it later. Deciding what format you're going to release a record to, okay, is important. The biggest hits that you hear on the radio, that you read about in the newspaper and hear about online, are the ones that have crossed multiple formats. That's how you have a big hit. They call it a multi-format smash. So this idea of where you start, picking the right single and what format you're going to start, and the markers that you have before you graduate to the next one is a huge, huge piece of the puzzle. And then I suppose if you get it all right, you have a home run, you'll constantly be dealing with these finance guys. Nobody thinks about them, but I'll tell you, as a manager, I spent a lot of time first meeting 2 people, the president of the company and then the guy that was writing the checks, and I made it a point to be friends with both of them. These are the guys that help get you money back if you're out into a reimburse you, mundane things, right? The royalty department, I'm not sure that's not just a mirage out there, and always was, but that would be there. And hopefully one day you'll get to meet somebody in the royalty department. They never get to talk to the artists, okay? So they'd be damn happy to meet you, okay? So we talked about all those. That's basically how these things work. Now, on top of all this, here's the rock stars of the record business, these senior executives up here, the presidents of these labels. Now, there used to be a lot more of them. It's become a very small list of people. But these are the folks out there that can say yes or no. And all the time I'll be talking to people and say, I want to talk to the person that can say yes or no. I'm not interested in the philosophers, the editorial guys, the freaking guys that are sportscaster, color commentary guys. What you want is one of these yes or no guys, because yeses and nos in life clarify, folks. Maybes, everybody in the business go, I kind of got a deal. Like, maybes aren't anything. Maybes are killers because you can't make a decision off of maybe. Yes, you're in. No, you do something else, and those are things that clarify. So getting friendly with these folks is important. And my advice to all of you, if you need to make one friend at the record company, make it the president, okay? Questions, anything online? Cody?
Yeah, we got a question. Ray Ricky says, is it better to license your album to a label or to sign straight up?
Well, let me answer the question. If you had the option to license it to a label, right? That kind of assumes that the option is yours. And typically, if you were in a position to do a licensing deal, which would be definitely better for you financially, okay, it's because you've already got something big going on, okay? You've managed to sell the first 50,000 records independently or somehow did that, and you now have some leverage, right? So in that scenario, yes, you would do a licensing deal. But in most cases, the labels are going to want to sign you straight up for one important reason. They're still going to put out all the money in promotion, and they make more money on a straight up deal than a licensing deal. All of us have seen these kind of sub deals, labels that are distributed by another label, right? And we'll talk a little bit later. The impact of this is getting prioritized in a label, but the label wants to sign you to a straight up deal. That's their first preference. The distribution deal would be second. Okay, so if you could make that happen, what's his name again?
Ray Ricky.
Ray Ricky, great. But if you're just theorizing this in your head, get over it, okay? If you get offered, if you're in a position to do that, then do that deal, all right?
We had a phone call come in. We have James on the line. I believe he's on the phone with us right now.
James, you're on the phone, man. What's up, my brother?
Hi, how are you?
Good. What's your question? Where are you from, first off?
I'm from Miami, Florida.
Jesus, is that just coincidence or Fritz here?
I don't know. No, not at all.
God, this is a great advertisement tape for the Chamber of Commerce in LA. Everybody's from out of state coming here. Okay, what's your question there?
My question is, I have an investor as of right now, and I manage a hip-hop, R&B pop artist. He has kind of like a similar vibe to Chris Brown and, Kid Ink, kind of that whole vibe. And I wanted to know specifically, we are basically putting a budget behind him, and we want to get him on radio, and we want to do like a big campaign behind it. I wanted to know specifically, will the labels be interested once we get regular rotation and start getting in the mainstream station?
Oh yeah, they'll be interested. No question about that, because if you've got your artist on major radio stations without the help of a major label, I can guarantee you they'll be interested. I can also guarantee you might actually have a better chance of flapping your arms and flying than making that happen. I'm not saying that just to piss on the dream, but I want to give you some reality. There's lots of money out in the world. I had one of my smart friends tell me once, he goes, Rennie, there's lots of money out there in the world. There's not as much smart money out there. And money alone was the issue, okay? Everybody could buy a hit. Those radio stations that have those tiny number of slots, it is so deeply based on relationships, okay, that it's difficult for me to imagine that somebody outside the mainstream of the business is going to know who to call, what buttons to push to make that happen. I don't have any problem believing that somebody will stick their hand out, and if you can put some money in it, would tell you what you want to hear to make it happen. So my advice would be is if you're really thinking about going that route, understand that money doesn't equate to smart money. Money doesn't equate to experience. And if you're going to try to make that happen, you're going to need to be hiring the same big-time independent promotion guys the labels are. And that very same guy is going to decide whether he wants to take your money on a one-off basis or take Sony's money all year round. So those are some of the realities of what you're trying to do. It's not to say that it can't happen, just to say that it is unlikely. But if you were successful, to your question, oh yeah, then you'd have a chance to talk about doing all the things that come with success. But here's the other side of it. If you're just on the radio and you don't have records in the stores, right, to show the scorecard that it's selling, you'll fail, okay? If you go to those radio stations and they say, hey, we want to have your artist play our event, and that's going to cost you 20 grand to send in there. If you don't have that, they're not going to play your record. They'll want to know what your game plan is. These are the questions that radio people ask. It's not just about the song. It's all the backdrop to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Did I piss you off yet?
No, it didn't, because I kind of have already a team in place of industry people. I'm dealing with Jeff Robinson. He's like Alicia Keys' old manager, and we've been talking to him. So he's been kind of guiding us in the right direction. Just
know, and I'm sure if he's being honest with you, he'll tell you, with the biggest, baddest artists, with the biggest, baddest record companies loaded to the gills with money and experience, it's like lightning in a bottle. Just know that.
Wow.
And I say this to you because I had this conversation early on our web show with somebody who had $300,000 he was going to invest in some band. And I was here with another manager friend of mine, a guy by the name of Jordan Burley, who's a big-time manager, manages Linkin Park and a bunch of bands. And he called us up and he was all enthusiastic. And we told him, what we were thinking. I could just feel the air coming out of his balloon. 6 months later, he sent me a note, and he actually donated $2,500 to our Indiegogo campaign. He said, I'm going to give you $2,500 because you saved me $300,000. Thank you, Steve Rennie and Jordan Burley. True story. Wow. True that, man. So, but you know what? I admire your chutzpah for thinking about it, but don't be afraid to really think about it. Because there might be better places to spend that money. And if your goal is to get to a record label, there might be another way to make that happen. All right?
Okay, definitely.
I want to thank you for calling in, man.
Thank you. You have a wonderful night.
All right, thank you. I'm sure it's nice down there in Miami. Enjoy it. All right. Okay, that was a good question here, actually. You have a question there, Fitz?
Do I need the microphone?
Oh, yeah.
No, I don't really have a question. I was in a band that did get on major radio and did sell a lot of copies, and it did score a lot of interest. But the band's timing with the label was bad once we signed the deal. And that's something maybe you could talk about, of president signing somebody, going to the president, getting signed, said yes, and then 4 months later, the president is fired.
Oh, we're going to talk about that later. Right. Yeah, these are, I say that, Fritz, and I smile because I'm really smiling just because I want to go in the corner and crawl up in a fetal position and cry, because it happens all the time. And this is what takes, there's a picture on this shirt that I was going to give you, me at 22 years old in college, brimming with enthusiasm. And then I want to put on the back of the next T-shirt this face, right? Because they don't look like the same guy, and it's because all those kind of things happen. And we're going to talk about that whole notion later. Okay. So now you kind of get an idea of how this whole works, and you have some general idea of how a record label works. The next question that comes up, and more so today than ever because of the internet, is why do I need a label, right? In the old days, nobody asked that. That was the goal. You try to get on a label. Today, just like this gentleman here, with all due respect, people think that it's just about money. Why do I need a label to do this, okay? And so let's talk about that right now. I told you I was going to introduce you to some of these friends of mine that have been, so generous with their time and have come on our show to share their thoughts. One of those gentlemen is a guy by the name of Tom Corson. Tom Corson and I kind of grew up in the business together. He started as an intern at IRS Records, which is over here on the lot of what was A&M Records, now Henson Studios. He's worked his whole career at record labels since he started as an intern and just kept going in the record business. He's been tremendously successful of years. He's worked at all the top labels. He's currently the president and chief operating officer of RCA Records. We had him here for an interview early on in our show. I asked him to describe what it is a label do. So rather than me tell you, I thought it'd be better to have somebody who's actually running a record label. So Cody, play that clip if you would, please.
Because there are a lot of artists that come in and say, why do I need a label? And it's a really good question. First of all, you generally need a label for scale. So if you want to actually be a big artist and actually reach the world and have a lot of and hit all those touch points, which are very difficult to hit, you need an army, and you really need an army, and it's very difficult. Then there's just very boring stuff, but very important stuff like making things, and
it's true.
And making products takes a lot of expertise and a lot of detail. And if you don't want to stumble and make a lot of mistakes along the way, you want to work with professionals who know how to do that.
Okay, I was just asking Cody over. You could probably hear me whispering, who was the guy we just talked to. That comment that Tom made there, I think, is golden. If you want to succeed at the top levels, and every artist needs to be honest with himself, do I want to just be a niche player, or am I just saying that because I'm a niche player and I really want to be a big star? If you really want to be a big star, no truer words have ever been spoken than you need an army, okay? This is not a sniping exercise. This isn't 6 Rangers coming in the middle of the night that win the war. It's 6 Rangers coming in the middle of the night, put laser on target and say, okay, bring hellfire right now. Bring it all. B-52s, cruise missiles, the whole thing. You need an army to make it happen out there at the top levels here. He mentioned something about you need scale. I want to talk about that notion of scale for a second and what that means. What does scale mean? Scale means you don't have just one investor. You've got millions of dollars at your disposal, huge financial resources. You have access to huge capital. There aren't very many small little independent labels. Actually, there are more independent labels than ever today, but most of them are hand to fist. They have a small staff of people. It's more like me and my little band of renegades than an army, okay? These big companies now, almost all of them are owned by multinational corporations that have access to raising money in all kinds of different ways. These major labels, okay, are used to playing the game at the highest levels. They're used to wars. That's what they do for a living. They're used to making big bets and writing big checks. That's what they do, okay? They also, as he talked about, have a huge infrastructure in place. They have an army, they have infantry, they have air force, they have navy, they have backup, they have operations. All of these things that those little band of terrorists don't have. They pop around the corner and crank that AK-47 off, and these other guys just wait and they'll blow the building down. That's what these guys have. So they have a whole team of people in all those key areas that we just talked about, right? It's a huge reservoir of experience in one place. It's important that you have enthusiasm in the music business, whether you're a young guy starting off or an old guy that should be losing his enthusiasm. That's one thing. But experience, okay, and enthusiasm is the best remedy right there. And I think for a lot of young people, they kind of get the idea of experience. But the bitch about his experience is it takes time to get it. I can talk to some of the guys in here that aren't 20, and they're going, fuck yeah, I know that, right? So the thing that's important when you have an existing infrastructure like a major label is these guys aren't practicing. They're not auditioning. They're not trying to figure this out. They're not like me and my guys trying to figure out the internet business. These are people that know what they're doing. And that's something that can't be underrated out there in the real world. That team of experts is hugely important because it takes all of these different elements we talked about coming together at the same time to have huge success. So people that have worked together together in tandem, that have worked together coordinating all these things, are just going to do a better job, all things being equal. And even in spite of all that, it doesn't guarantee success. It's a 5 out of 100, 2 out of 100 affair if you are Tiger Woods of that business, right? So these things, the other part of it is that in the music business, things have to come together relatively fast. So having that big infrastructure, that team of experts in place is huge. One of the other things that major labels, love them or hate them, bring to the table that an indie might not bring to the table is leverage because of their rosters, okay? If you've got Beyonce and somebody wants to do something with Beyonce, let me tell you, they might be more inclined to help you on budding artists A, B, or C than if it's just down to your young artist, right? That can't be underestimated. So this idea of offering favors in exchange for access to your other artists is huge. It works at media. It works at radio. It works with brand sponsors that want to do something in the music space. So the more weight you have, the more leverage you have in that game, the better. Saying no to a little indie label with one act is a lot tougher to do or easier to do than saying no to Sony or Warner's or Interscope, right? Does that make sense? Any questions so far?
Yeah, we have one question from Durock Tucker. The question is there any advice on starting your own indie label?
Go slow. Well, we're going to talk about the indie major thing at the end, but I think by the end of this whole thing, that answer should become clear to you. If you're going to start an indie label, you better have money, okay, number one, and enthusiasm, but you better have some money. You better find some experience, okay? If it takes you 10 years to learn that experience, you better have enough money to cover it, right? And all of those things. So I'm going to come back to the indie versus major, but I'll just say, if you're brand new to this business, it's one thing for Scott Borchetta, who used to work as the head of promotion for a number of big labels, to start Big Red Machine and sign Taylor Swift. It's one thing for Daniel Glass, who runs Glassnote, who ran one big promotion staff after another for years at the highest levels to start an indie label. It's quite another for a young college kid with no experience, no money, no contacts to do it. Sounds sexy. Might be easier to try to get a job at a record company, get some experience on Sony or Warner's or Interscope's dime, and then go out and start an indie label, okay? One of the other reasons that you want to be with a major label, and this is a huge one, global presence, okay? You want to do this business, if you're going to do it, I say try to do it at the highest levels. That means going global, right? The internet provides you this wonderful ability to speak to your fans around the world, right? But before that, these big labels set up a global operation so that you were talking to people in New York. A guy like me would go to London, I would go to Germany, I would go to Australia, I'd go to the major, centers, and you had people there that were already tuned into what you were doing. They were already motivated in different ways versus going out and piecing together that little network of partners around the world is really, really tough. So that worldwide infrastructure also allows you to coordinate activities. So that war you're starting is happening at like a ballet on the best days, where things are happening when they should be happening. And it's a huge advantage of a major label. Here's the other big one, and this dovetails with our friend's question here. One of the single greatest reasons to be with a major label is they have huge contacts, huge experience in getting songs on the radio, okay? Getting airplay for all these marketing tricks we'll talk about, okay? There is nothing better than having your song slammed 40, 50 times a day on every radio station around the world. That's how you get people walking down the sidewalk humming your song, whether it's Pharrell, Happy, pick your poison, right? These labels have a dedicated staff of people, okay? Not as big as it used to be, but still a big staff of people in all different formats. Specialists in alternatives, specialists in hip hop, specialists in pop, in the ability to cross over in between. They have deep contacts at these national radio chains. That gentleman was talking about radio. If you can get Clear Channel on board, you might get 50 stations in a pop, okay? Which saves you a lot of time. And remember, we talked about time is of of the essence because time costs you money. Time costs you opportunity. The labels have the money and the expertise and the know-how of who to hire those indies that this gentleman was going to thinking about hire, right? And when it comes to competing for the services of those indies, they're going to vote 99 times out of 100 with the guys that are keeping them in business 365 days a year. Does that make sense for everybody here? Any questions? All right, we'll keep rolling here. Okay, so that's a big, long answer to why you would think about a major label, or at least have it on your radar. Once you've gotten through that whole process and you've got an idea what they're doing, then the whole issue becomes, how do I get signed to a label? You've taken it all on board and you go, okay, you know what, I agree. I want to play at the bigs. I want to be as big a star as I can be. So I want to be with a label. How do you get signed to a label, right? The question of the day, I suppose, if you're out there on the outside looking in, is what are labels looking for? I get asked all the time. I get kids asking me, what should I do? Should I be what they want to be? All that. It all gets down to this whole idea of what labels are looking for. First and foremost, they're looking for great, unique talent. Now, you can ask 100 people that all have their own idea of what that is, okay? But A&R people get paid to sift through that process, and what they want are great, unique talent. Our friend Tom Corson that we talked about earlier had this to say. He said, you have to have tremendous talent to cut through to the top level of this business, no matter who you are and what genre you're in, because you're competing against the very best, and you are from day one. That's the reality of it. It's not, nobody's picking favorites, but you're playing for the top level of the game, and you have to have big time talent, something that's unique. Lorde stood out because her talent just kind of stood out from the crowd. You know, Beyonce, Alicia Keys, any of these great artists, they have something unique going on by and large, okay? But talent alone, ironically, isn't enough. I want to introduce you to another friend of ours who's come on our show. He's a guy by the name of Aaron Bayshuk. Young A&R guy's been at it for about 10 years. He's a senior VP of Atlantic Records. He is best known for his work with Bruno Mars. He has been working with Bruno Mars for the better part of 10 years. Tried twice to get him signed to Atlantic Records. The Bruno Mars, the can't miss, the biggest guy in the world, right? Couldn't get signed. Actually got signed to Motown Records, got dropped. Aaron Bayshuk tried to get him signed to Atlantic twice. They said no. Stayed at it, ultimately happened, and now he's a big star. I wanted to have Aaron Bayshuk tell you a little bit about what he's looking for, his little checklist, if you will, when he's signing a band. Play the video there, Code, would you?
The artist has to be talented, number one. That's got to be the number one most important thing. I got to feel that there's a really special talent there, and not just talented, but uniquely talented. That they're showing me something that I don't see every day. Their drive and determination and how hard they work, all equally as important factors. One that gets overlooked a lot is the importance of the team behind that artist.
Talk about that for a second.
Yeah, I think it's just as important that an artist have a great manager, because there's different kinds of bad managers, but some that the label may call bad because they're difficult, but at the end of the day, they might really be contributing to the artist's career. But it's so important that the artists have a great team that understands who that artist is, that aren't just a bunch of yes men to that artist, that are real with them, paint honest pictures of the situation, that work well with the label, that there's direct communication and an exchanging of ideas. I think that's a crucial thing that often gets overlooked. I get asked all the time, would you sign Justin Timberlake if the team around him was horrible? And I really have to think about that, because I know the difficulties of working with a difficult manager, and it can make the process more difficult than it's worth.
Yeah. Unique talent, right? Which seems obvious, okay? And then he talked about this notion of experience and a strong team around you. We talked about this whole idea of building your professional team in week 3, lesson 3. So if you folks are just tuning in and you want to get up to speed, I suggest you go back and you take a look at that whole lesson on building your professional team, right? Because it means something out there to an artist when you want to get signed. Labels don't want to work with difficult managers that only cause trouble, that don't add value. Now, if you're a difficult manager, but you make things happen, they'll respect you. I used to kid around when I worked at Sony that if they weren't crying about you when they're peeing in the bathroom, right, and talking about what a jerk you are, that freaking Rennie or that guy Cliff Bernstein, you weren't really a manager, okay? But they tolerated those guys because they had experience and they had a point of view and they were representing their artists. And at the end of the day, it makes their jobs easier. Inexperienced guys that are auditioning, trying it out, experimenting, they don't want anything to do with it. Why? There's too much at stake. Millions of dollars are at stake, so they can't wait for some knucklehead to get up to speed or some kid who's fueled with enthusiasm but no experience. They can't wait for that to happen. So this idea of having a strong team around you is a huge, huge point to understand. And for all the artists that think it's just about the music, wake up, smell the roses. You need to get your music to speak to a team of people. There's another notion that people are looking for at a label that goes beyond the music, right? Most of these labels today, even in the old days, but it's easier to do in some ways, they want to know that as an artist, you have laid some groundwork on your own, okay? That person was thinking about a licensing deal versus a straight up deal. You'd only get that licensing deal if you'd built something groundwork on your own. I want to introduce you to another friend of ours, a gentleman by the name of Neil Jacobson. Neil is the Senior Vice President of A&R at Interscope Records. Neil started in this business, went to college, couldn't get a job, worked in his dad's carpet business, became one of the most successful A&R guys around. He's got a wonderful perspective on the music business. And he had some thoughts about this notion of getting something going on your own, which I'll share with you right now. Take it away, Coach.
Yeah.
And everybody's not going to get signed.
There's a few different ones. One answer would definitely be momentum, right? Fuck the gatekeepers. Get the momentum yourself. Show me that you've gotten something going on. You know, I don't need to see 150 miles an hour, but it'd be nice to see that you've created a groundswell locally, or that you have a social presence with a series. I don't care that you have tens of millions of followers or views, but I'd like to see that you have a network of people that follow everything that you're doing.
Now, that's one reporter's opinion. You might go, oh, that's just what he's saying. But this is the mentality of the business today, more so than ever. The good news for artists out there and managers of artists is that in today's world, you have so many more ways to actually get something going and to show signs to a label that there might be something worth taking to the next level. I want to go back to our friend Tom Corson, who had this to say. I'll just read it. He said, it's challenging to get a label deal for sure, but the beauty of what can happen online is this. If you can create some piece of content, or you can put up a song, or you can do a show and build a community around that, with your group and your artist, then you will get noticed. So this idea of how you get signed to a label isn't so much sometimes you pitching them, is going out and building something on your own with the tools that you have at your disposal today. And more often than not, that will get you the attention, and they'll be calling you rather than you going the other way around. And when they're calling you, it just puts you in a much better position. There's something else that major labels are looking for, and something as a manager I can speak to as well. And it's this notion of having a strong vision of who you are, right? Cody, put up our front page of our site. On our front page of our site, there's a section on our feed, okay, that's called The Big Picture. And I did a bunch of clips when I first started the website that talked about these ideas about how to get your head in the right place. And one of them was called Finding Your True North. And it's all about understanding who you really are and owning it, okay? So I want to we'll go back to the Aaron Bay Shook for one more bit, because he had a great thoughts on this that I want to share with you, because I want you to understand it's so important that you have that notion. Play the clip if you would, Code.
Come in with a point of view, know who you want to be. My job is not to tell you what kind of artist you should be or say do this, do that. It's supposed to nurture your vision and help you get where you want to be. So you can't expect to get a record deal and have us do all the work. You have to be willing to work 10 times harder once you're signed than you did even to get signed. And I just think that's so crucial, that you're confident in who you are and you know exactly the kind of artist you want to be. And of course that can change during the process, but you've got to bring something to the table. I can't name any truly massively successful artist that isn't running their own show.
Yeah. That is a great bit of advice out there, folks. You got to know who you are, okay? You have to be willing to work and demonstrate a commitment to this. You got to be able to put together a team of people, right? But more important than anything, you got to own who you are. So it's not just about a song. And so when you hear me talking about the fairy tale version of the music business versus the real music business, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Songs don't just fly and become big hits. It's more than that. And you got to understand that. And if you don't understand that, you will not succeed in this business. Maybe you'll be the lightning bolt out of the sky. So that's some thoughts about what the label's looking for. Okay, so now you're sitting out there going, okay, this is starting to make some sense here. So how do I go out and pitch a label? Well, we know you got to go out and get something going. That might be the best pitch. But when it comes to actually approaching these people, the A&R people or the president or any influence maker inside a record company, more often than not, okay, they need to hear that lead, they need to hear that pitch from a trusted source, okay? This idea of some guy on the internet gonna go pitch you to a label is bullshit, okay? I'll just call it what it is, okay? People in the business, it's a small circle. Michael's worked in it, you've worked in the business. If I say that it's a small circle of friends, does that sound like a fair statement? Are they inviting people in willy-nilly into that? No, you earn your way into the mix here by doing things, okay, and sticking around and building credibility. That notion of trusted source is important. So who's that going to be? We talked about it a little bit early. It could be your attorney. In a lot of cases, it is an attorney because you can find a well-connected attorney, and if you can find a way to pay him, he'll at least get you in front of some people that could say yes or no, or that might be a step or two away from that yes or no. Might be your manager, okay, who's well-connected, that's been in the business for a long time. If I wanted to go take a band to a label, I could certainly get, Aaron Bay Shook to listen to. I could certainly get Neil Jacobson or Tom Corson. Doesn't guarantee that they get signed, but it guarantees that you get a chance to make your case at court. But it could be anybody. It could be your publisher. Maybe somebody signed you to a publishing deal first before a record label. Now they've got some skin in the game, and so they're going to be motivated to go out and help you get a record deal because it makes them money. Right? It could be a promoter, it could be a club owner, it could be anybody that's worked in this business that's built up a track record of success and credibility in the business. And by and large, the things that fall out of the blue into the business from the truck driver or Tommy Tang, who was Vanilla Ice's manager, who was the parking lot attendant, there's enough of those stories to keep the dream alive, but that's not the real music business. Fritz is over here nodding his head. Okay, so how do you connect with these A&R guys? Okay, if you're going to go pitch an A&R guy or anybody in this business that's doing it on a day-to-day basis, make believe you had 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes or 3 minutes to make your case. So don't start off with the story of your life, okay? Don't start off telling them all the things that are wrong with the demo that you're about to play them. Well, I didn't mix in there. I got to get, you know what I'm talking about here, right? Give them your best shot, okay? Because it might be the only shot you get, and I can't stress it enough. When you call me up, don't give me some big, long story. Get down to the money of it right out of the box here, because that's what you need to do. And you think about it, that same mentality happens all the way through the business. Your song goes to that radio program, he's going to listen. If he's not feeling it in the first minute, you're in trouble, okay? That's the mentality you have to have. But more importantly, the best way to pitch those labels, right, is to do your own thing and they will find you. So it sounds too easy, but that's how it goes, okay? Let's say now that you've taken on board everything I said, and now you have some interest from a label. I get this question asked all the time, how should I got a meeting with so-and-so, or I got a meeting with a manager, I got a meeting an agent, what should I do? What should I expect? I want to go back one more time to my friend Tom Corson, who says much better than I can say about this. He talks in this clip that I'm going to show you about this whole courting process, and he has some advice for artists that are sitting in those meetings, or maybe sitting with 2 or 3 different labels, okay, talking about coming on board and what to look for. Play the clip if you would, Code.
But when you're going through that courting process, I encourage artists to ask all the hard questions. There's nothing, out of bounds. Asking it in a sensible way, but you've also got to sell yourself. And whatever you're selling, you've got to come in and you've got to know who you are. And then you should get all your expectations out. This is what I want to do. And if somebody's asking you a question, answer it honestly. If you don't know the answer, think about it, because it's probably a pretty good question, because you're getting it from somebody who does this every day. You're doing it for your first time probably, unless you've been in a couple other bands. Even then, you're not that experienced. And so be open to the process. And at the end of the day, what's going to happen, if you're really lucky, is you're going to get a couple of deals that are going to look very similar. Excuse me. And you're going to ask yourself, well, who do I sign to? Who's right to go? Well, I really like that guy at Epic Records, Steve Rennie. He is amazing. And that guy, Tom Corson, he's cool. But but then what you really should think of is like, okay, where are our expectations? Are we in line? Because while somebody may be very charming and funny and really a good salesperson, are they really answering your questions? And 2 years from now, when your record comes out, or 18 months or whatever, how many of those people that are in the room are still going to be there? Is there someone that I can talk to? Someone that's going to call me back? And am I really connected with on some level? And it's very artificial because the process is really compressed. But get your expectations in line and then make a decision and go. Once you go, like you said, that's where the real work wins.
Yeah, and once you go, you got to go. That makes sense? You're smiling over there, Fritz,
Doing some work.
Yeah, it's the story of it. You get in the air and you fall in love with some executive, and bang, they're gone. And you don't get a call. The guy who fires them call you up saying, hey, Fritz, your buddy? I freaking sacked him, right? It doesn't happen that way. But it happens more often than you want. Typically, it might be your A&R guy, your advocate in the company who sold you in. Now he's gone or he's taken a better job, and it's kind of like, hey, you're on your own. Fritz, you had some comments? Mike from?
I do have some comments, and maybe you can explain to this too with any label, whether it be indie or major. We were signed opposite from your chart. We were signed by being on the radio, and the radio promoter at the labels were all coming to us because we were on the radio on a big market in Miami, and we got other markets involved.
Sure.
And we sold some CDs. But what we found out is we were signed by a president, but we didn't have an A&R guy that really liked us. And then there was some infighting at the label, which we didn't know. Being an artist, you don't know what's going on behind the doors. And maybe you can explain. I'm always any label. I'm always curious. How do you kind of weave through that when you don't know if they're being sold to somebody else, and they're not going to tell anybody they're being sold.
Yeah, a perfect segue there, Fritz. You must have been looking over your shoulder. Let's talk about what happens once you get signed to a label, right? You've made it through that whole process. Now you get signed, and you're now there. Okay, and for so many artists, they make the mistake of thinking, "Wow, we've won the race." Okay, I talked about it with Nate Roos from Fun. Same thing when he got signed as a young kid, had a bidding war, and now they got signed. Now we've got it made. Wrong. That's where the drama really starts. The truth is, most horses don't get in the starting gate. Okay, but once you're in the gate, there's 15 other horses, that all have great jockeys and have a shot to win. So the biggest issue you face once you get inside a record company is fighting for priority, okay? Because just because they signed you, if you think that all acts on a label are created equal, wrong. It's not true, okay? All kinds of things go on, and you alluded to one of them. When you work at a big multinational corporation, almost without exception, politics starts to enter the mix, and there are competing agendas going on, and you wind up competing for attention and resources in that company. And your way of getting those attention and resources is the things you do, but also the people you have in the company that are pulling for you and the weight they have to pull, right? So one of the most important things I learned over years of managing artists is to understand what your agenda is and the label's agenda. Now, I'll piss off some of my label friends by saying, so many times over the years, I would sit in a room full of record execs, and they go, Steve, we have the artist's best interest at heart. And I would say, let's stop right there, okay? You, if you're being honest, have the label's interest and agenda at heart, and I have no problem with that. But for the sake of clarity, I have the band's agenda at heart here. I have the band's best interest at heart, and let's just make sure we're clear on that, okay? Their agenda is to break your band. They want it to be successful. They want it to be as big as they can make it. Our agenda from the artist is to be as big as we can and to make it, okay? How we get there is where all the arguments start, right? So let's talk about some of that stuff. The first thing I learned is that if you're an artist or a young manager that's going into a label and you're saying, what's your plan? Boom, you failed the first test right there, okay? Because you need to have a plan yourself, okay? You have to have some idea of how this works. Hence, we talk about how record labels work. We talk about all these pieces of the puzzle. Not the fairy tale version, but the reality version, because you got to understand how that works to come up with your agenda. And it's your job as an artist and a manager to articulate what your agenda is, what your vision is, why the art, you have a better understanding of the artist. And that means having the vision and all those things in place, because that is what's going to happen. And there are going to be some honest discussions in there, and you're going to disagree. So what do you get fighting about when you're at a label? Okay, let's talk about some of the things. One that comes up all the time, I'll ask Fritz because he was an artist, creative control. Every artist I talk to, I don't want them messing with my creative control. It's a knee-jerk. It's them spewing the words without understanding what it really means, okay? And I'm going to tell you a story here, and I'm going to leave out the name of the artist. Great young band that I came across through our website, who I got friendly with. I started trading emails and phone calls with one of the guys in the band. They got offered a record deal. And I won't mention the name of the label, but you were close to them, okay? And they had an offer on the table. And they passed on the offer because they didn't want to give up creative control, okay? Here's the things that creative control, talking about a producer, talking about the song selection for a record, talking about maybe re-recording your record that you did on your own for $5,000, which you're now convinced can compete against all the stuff that was done by top-level producers. So the long story short is they wound up saying, we're not going to do that deal, didn't have another offer, and the label got pissed off. And so when they came around, it was too late. Deal gone, band still sitting there, okay? So I say that because people get lost in the words and they live in the reality of the world. So disputes over producer. If the label has an idea about the producer and it was a good idea, here's what I've learned. If it's a great idea, it doesn't freaking matter if it came from the label. I'm in the business of finding good ideas. If they got one, great. If they don't have one, and I'm not going to assume they do, I'm going to have an idea, and then we'll test those ideas out there. So that idea of creative control, it comes in the form of video directors. Band goes, we want video director X, Y, or Z to do this, and the label's thinking, well, I'm not sure we want to do that, right? And here's something, big picture concept in our big picture thoughts on our RenmanMB site. Money wants an opinion, okay? Money wants to talk. Money wants to tell you how they feel. If you don't want to hear their opinion, then you write the check, right? Oh, you don't have the money, okay? Well, I'm an artist, Steve. What the frickin' hell does that mean? You're an artist. That doesn't give you an exclusion. Money wants an opinion. So labels are going to want to have an opinion. And just because they have an opinion is no reason to take offense, okay? Your job is to convince them that you have a better idea than yours. And that goes all back down to having a clear sense of who you are, having managers and professional people that can help you articulate that, right? Does that make sense? Any questions so far, Code?
I do have a couple questions. Avenger Stuff says, how do you get the the record companies to, or the record labels to throw all of their assets and their efforts into your project?
Well, we're talking about that right now, okay? Well, we're going to keep talking about that. First, you have to have an idea. You have to have the ability to articulate that idea. You have to be able to convince a bunch of professionals that are writing the checks, okay, that your idea is better than yours. Maybe sometimes you just wear them out because they're all political, right? And they don't really know, and they're trying to check the wind. So you go talk to the boss, the president, and the president goes, I talked to Rennie, this is what we're doing. And then they all go, God, I love that idea. Or you do what I did for years. I'd walk into meetings and say, gentlemen, for the record here, if this turns out to be a great idea, of course, any of you guys can be the father and mother of this idea. If it turns out to be a bad idea, it'll be my idea. Now that we've got that covered, let's move on, okay? One of the big things you argue about all the time or discuss with great fervor is this whole notion of singles and how to get radio airplay. Remember when I talked about agendas at the top? Okay. The radio promotion guys, God love them, toughest job on the planet. They'll do anything to get radio airplay. So if you manage a rock band like I did for years, their idea of getting radio airplay is, we'll go promise the band play free for every radio show out there, Steve, and we're going to get airplay. And I go, you know what? We're not doing that. What do you mean, Steve? We're not doing that. What do you mean? We're not doing that because I'm not going to give up the band's touring business so that you can get somebody on the radio, because getting them to play on their show doesn't guarantee me airplay. I did that a couple times, got burned. We're not doing that. So did the label guys like that? No, but they accepted it. The band, the onus on the band is to deliver songs that make the programming grade, not the guy's ancillary income business, which is those radio shows. So those are the kinds of things you argue about and discuss with labels. And it's important that the artists have a vision of who they are. It's important that their representatives have the will and the skill to articulate that and the balls to sit there and say, we're not doing that, in the face of the people that are writing the checks. Okay? So when you talk about how I got this look on my face, it's from sitting there having everybody hate you at any given point here. You talk about money, how to get them to spend money on you, right? Those are things you argue about all the time. How much they're spending on money, marketing, where they're spending it, who they're spending it with. If you're going to have an articulate conversation about that, you have to have experience in all those areas. You have to be able to make your case. And it comes from experience. Okay? That's where it comes from. We talked about, here's one that when I first went to work at Sony, the first month I was there, I had to tell 2 bands, we weren't putting your record out. Right? What? You're not putting my record out? You signed me to the label, Fritz. What are you talking about? You're not putting my record. You told me you love me, man. And now you're not putting my record out. Well, you know what? You made the record. You insisted on doing it your own way, and you have the balls to live by your decision. But you know, I just spent $250,000 making your record. I'm going to have to spend another $250,000, $300,000, $400,000 marketing it, and I don't think I have what I need. And by the way, I bought the rights to that record. I own that record. Okay, and I've literally had people cry in my office and they're go, fuck you. And I'm going, it's not me. I'm just the messenger here. And the truth of the matter is, you don't get your record back either. Why won't they give the record back, Fritz?
You can buy it.
Maybe.
But you own it.
Well, the label owns it. Let me tell you why 95% of the time they won't even give you your record back. Because what if it turned out they were wrong, some other label got it and it turned into a hit? Who was that, big rap guy years ago? Got Curtis Jackson, what was his name? Blank. 50 Cent, he's the water dude, you know, he's not even a hip hop guy anymore. He got passed up by some label, somebody put this pretty much the same record out as a home run. That's why they don't give those records back. Okay. Those are some of the things you argue about or discuss with record labels, right? And I'm going to remind you again, labels want somebody with a clear view and a clear idea of what they're doing. So you standing up for what you really believe is important. If you stand up over issues like creative control and you haven't thought it all the way through, beware. If you've thought it all the way through and you'd rather be indie than work with these guys, fair enough. Any questions?
I have a question. And
Nick.
Speaking to what you just said about maybe you want to go indie instead of going with the other guys, what if you still want to go with the other guys, but you want to start out indie? I feel like you can kind of target yourself to have more of an army catered to you if you start out maybe on a smaller scale, and then you have more clout in signing some sort of deal with a major later. I feel like we're not touching on the fact that you might be able to build your own army instead of, lobbying yourself for, having their army.
Yeah. Okay, I think it's a great thing, and it's a good segue into this whole conversation of indie or a major label, right? I think first thing, you got to understand what it would take to build that to X level, right? And I think as an overview, I was having a conversation with some young guys who started a website in Chicago called Audio Tree TV. I don't know if you're familiar with it, right? They come in and they invite people into a studio and record, some great quality stuff, stream it live and so forth. So we were having this conversation about, as certain bits of the artist development infrastructure that for years would let a band develop a little bit, which has gone away, if in fact there isn't a whole new infrastructure of artist development, being born outside it, So if you're going to go out and try to build it on your own, you need to have a plan. You need to figure out, how to make a great record. You need to figure out how to get the word out, whether it's you hiring a publicist. You need to figure out, are you going to build it? Are you going to manufacture CDs or LPs or this or that, and how much money you're willing to put in inventory? All these boring type of things that happen much further along the line when somebody goes, well, we just want to put our record out. That's not a plan, okay? That's like a vanity book. That's not a plan at all. So if you can do that, understand what it takes, fund it, execute it, find people with enough experience and enthusiasm to get that first 50,000 sold, I would say that's the way to do it, right? But understand that it is as brutally tough for you with limited resources, competing for all those slots with the army, okay? You have to be the sniper of snipers that sits there and goes and takes out the general and they go, whoa, where'd that happen from? They do happen. Macklemore and Lewis got it going to a certain level and then plugged into a major system, so they still think they're indie, and they did have their, because they did so much of it the way they wanted to do it. But they got something going. And then, of course, they had a better ride to it, right? The Taylor Swift, Scott Borchetta, not a major label, big-time guy, had money, could spot talent, spent his whole career getting songs on the radio. So he Taylor Swift saw a path to get on the radio, but don't think for a minute he ever looked at her as a country act, okay? He was thinking down the road and he made something happen. So you can do that. So let's talk about this notion of indie versus major here. Remember, money wants an opinion, okay? Whether it's your money, Sony's money, Interscope's money, doesn't freaking matter, right? Money alone won't get it done. You need experience and team, right? So what are the pros and cons? For a major label, we know that they have money. We know that by and large they have experience. We know because of that they have connections. They've been doing it for 50, 60, 70, 80 years. We know they have a roster that allows them to leverage, thing. And we know that once you get on a label, your biggest mission is to make sure you're one of those priorities, right? So what the labels have is this ability to pull all of those elements together on a global basis, right? That's a huge benefit. Here's the downside of a record label. They have a busy list. They got 1 million bands that they could spend money on. I make believe you're a record label. You got 20 acts out here. You can't spend the same amount of money on all of them. 2 of them are starting to show some signs. And of the 18, 2 of them were big buzz bands that you felt great about, that you thought were can't miss. Now you're going to go bet. Who you betting on? The ones you thought were showing some signs, or the ones that are showing the signs? Okay, now make believe you're a record exec and you got a 3-year contract, you got 1 year left, okay? And you need to show some. Who are you going to bet on? The ones that are showing, okay? So that's the downside of a label. They focus, on this immediate part of things right now, right? We were talking about that artist development. That's not good if you need some time to develop. But if you're one of those acts that needs some time to develop, you may be better off doing it on your own, because at least you can, control the image and how you want to do it. Black Keys made, 4 or 5 records as an indie band? And then they became the biggest thing in the world, and everybody just found out about the Black Keys, but they were 35 years old. They've been doing this for years. They did what amounts to the minor leagues of baseball, the D League in basketball, what the NCAA is for the NFL. There was this development league down here so that when they got brought up to the bigs, bang, they were hitting home runs. Everybody go, where were those guys? They were working on their game, okay? Struggling and gutting it out, and that commitment and desire and burning desire to do something great had to fuel them. It wasn't money, it wasn't record sales, it wasn't airplay, right? They built their following by going out and playing live, the only thing they can control. So they played every shithole in America, okay? And when they got their chance to shine, everybody goes, geez, man, where the hell have these guys been? That's the reality of it, you know? Question?
So basically what you're saying is that you shouldn't try to shoot the short game, but do the long game, that you can't do anything else other than be in front of a group performing for them and bringing joy to their lives. You can't be the short game guy. You can't be, I'm going to get famous right now because I'm on, American Idol or something.
There's enough of those out of the blues to keep the dream alive, but the reality of it is that you have to be in the game for the long time. And in the golf analogy, the long game is the sexy part, hitting the long drive, but they make their money doing the little stuff. Nobody wants to practice putting all day. It's boring. They'd rather watch the ball fly. But the money's made right here. The money's made in the ugly, not in the sexy stuff.
Your heart is, I will not quit. I'll keep going for years and years and years.
Absolutely. And typically when I've talked to musicians, and I try to talk everybody out of the business, Michael, and it's my way of testing their thing. I want to sit there and go, I look into the eyes of a grizzly old veteran who's been there, done, and you can't tell me much about the business. And I'm going to sit there and go, you're crazy for doing this, man. Are you out of your freaking mind? Go to law school, get a job, sell insurance. People are dying every day, okay? Sell health insurance, whatever it is, if you want something steady. But if I can't talk you out of it and you just got to do this, then have a seat on the couch. But let's talk about the real music business, not this bullshit fairy tale version that they're teaching you in some fucking college because they read Don Passman's book. Well, with all due respect, Don, okay? That's real. I'm going to piss off some of my friends, but I might piss them off, but I piss them off because they know it's true, okay? So that's the picture from a major label. Now let's talk about indies, okay?
I got a question about major labels real quick. Do you have a chance as a low-ranking act on a major label? You were talking about the ones who are showing. If you're not showing right away, will they put...
I'll say this. There was a day when that happened. I managed one of those bands, Incubus. Sold 100,000 records in the cycle of their first record. It ultimately wound up selling 600,000 or 700,000. We didn't even go to radio with a single. We made a $6,000 video, but we spent $300,000 on touring, and the band did 310 shows on their first cycle. Did a couple where they did 9 in a row, okay? Drove the van, did all that stuff, okay? So they had commitment that was really unbelievable, okay? But they also managed to keep developing, and Sony was patient, and then they put out their second record, and it almost didn't happen at radio. They kept touring, we kept doing things, and by luck of the draw, it kept working. But they had what would have been an old school case study in artist development, where their second and third albums blew it out the freaking door, and then they've had a long career. It's happening in less and less today for really important reasons. The labels aren't making as much money as they used to be. They don't have as many people working there as they used to be. They are stressed, and nobody should cry for the labels, but don't get on the bandwagon of kicking the labels just because it's easy. It's easy to bitch about being a label. You know what's even worse? It's a bitch being a record label, to my friend who's thinking about starting one, okay? So here's the indie label. Smaller roster should equal more attention, right? Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But I'll tell you this, love and enthusiasm won't win the race. Money, execution, grizzly veterans, that's more likely to make it happen. I'll tell you this about an indie label. They have a greater stake in your success for the same reason that for me as a manager for 16 years, people go, aren't you worried about getting fired? Shouldn't you take on other bands? I'm going, no, I got one way to win. And we talked about it all the time in the band. We got one way to win here, gentlemen. So that back against the wall, okay, or hanging 10 toes over the edge with the wind at your back keeps you motivated on paper. Sometimes it works, sometimes it don't, but on paper, they should be able to spend more time with you. It's a lot better than doing it on your own because you're likely to get some bit of experience and enthusiasm, okay? But that won't be enough to make it happen. Here's the cons. They may have a lot of love, but they may not have a lot of money. Okay, they may have a lot of enthusiasm. That young kid that's starting an indie label, you know, and you're a young band and you're happy to say I got a label deal, but it's some kid in the college who has more enthusiasm than experience or money. So that might not be enough for you. They, by and large, are going to have less infrastructure. All those things that you need to have happening, coordinated at exactly the right time, nobody auditioning, much less likely they're going to have that. That whole global aspect that we're talking about here, right, is much more difficult when you're stitching together your network of marketing and retail and distribution around the world. When you're doing that market by market, much more work, much more difficult to coordinate. So those are all the things you have going against you as an indie. So let me give you my thoughts on an indie versus a major. I've worked with major labels my whole manager life. This last year, prior to me parting company with my friends in Incubus, Brandon Boyd, the singer of the band, decided to do a solo arc. And we had some conversations about whether we're going with a major label or not. We took it around to some major labels. Some were interested, but we're not enthusiastic enough to make us an offer. And so we would have had to gone through a much longer process. And Brandon, for whatever reason, wasn't comfortable. He goes, let's go and do it indie. So we did the kind of indie hybrid thing where we went with a company called In Grooves that provided you a menu of services, which is the new thing. They'll distribute it, they'll manufacture it, they'll advance you some money against expectations of sales to a modest level, right? But we also had to go out and hire a marketing person ourselves, a person that had worked for years at a major label, okay, who knows all the tricks, knew how to do all of that stuff, that making things stuff you had to do, and we paid him. We hired an independent publicist because we needed somebody to go out and tell the story. So we hired those people. And I won't tell you how much money it cost, but it was 6 figures, which is a drop in the bucket in the big scheme of the record business. So what it taught me was this idea of being an indie because it sounds sexy, because it feels like the little bird and the butterfly out in the garden. Don't buy into that, okay? More often than not, almost every indie artist that I ever talked to that was on an indie and went to the major, I'd ask them, so would you rather be on an indie or major? They go, please, right? Because if you want to play at the bigs, it takes so much more than you think. It's so much more than just the song. It has to start with a great song, but so much has to happen. And I talk about it relentlessly. Making the music is the inspiring part for artists. It's the part that fuels them. It's the part that they have to do, right? But the decisions you make after you've made that music have as much impact, perhaps more, than the actual creation of the music. And understanding how that works and understanding what you're really getting into is key to having a shot at success, right? So let's wrap it all up. I know everybody's got to go. We talked about what labels do. We talked about how they structure, what those people do, how they work with each other in a major label or in a successful label situation. Forget whether it's major or indie. We talked about why you need a label, the things that they do that can help you get to the next level. We talked about how they get signed, what are they looking for, how the best way to approach them. And now you know a little bit about what it takes once you've signed to a label, how to manage them. So my advice to everybody, that if you're an artist or if you're a manager out there representing an artist, is now that you know all of that, go back to square one. Go make some great music, okay? Because if you don't get that part right, the rest of it doesn't freaking matter. So next week, for all you folks that are watching, we'll be talking about music publishing. I want to thank all the students here in the studio, all the folks that have been watching online today. I want to thank my wonderful team of renegades here, Cody Cohen, my son Matt Rennie, and Cody Romness over there in the corner who you can't see. So that's going to wrap it up today. My name's Steve Rennie. I'm the Renman. This has been RenmanU. We'll see you next week, folks. Class dismissed.